flag. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
There you go. We're covering two topics that are obviously very important to the association. One is to make sure that we all agree on priorities and things as we move forward to take care of for this year, and then we're going to have a discussion on the software environment and technology landscape. So I think a lot of progress should be made today. I think it's a very good opportunity for all of us to get together, share notes, share questions, get some answers, and that as a precursor to us making a decision moving forward. So with that, I'll move into the next item on the agenda. That's public comments. As with any meeting, please say your name and your address, and the floor is now open for public comments. Seeing none, I'll close the floor and move into the next item on the agenda, discussion, planning and priorities. Ted.
Yes, the topic is Association General Manager short-term priorities. Concise statement the board needs to discuss, and with the general manager's input, set 3 or 4 short-term priorities, less than 90 days, to focus on and accelerate completion of items. Background. The board has indirectly taken a shotgun approach to tasking the administration to chase and address multiple issues concurrently without prioritizing and staying focused on the most important problems or needs facing our association. Last year, we identified pressing issues to include food and beverage operations, preparation of a budget that made cuts in operations and targeted the operational deficit, a forensic audit, personnel, and third-party contracts, and the return of stability to the operation. By concentrating on these priorities, we were able to address each and every one to the betterment of the operation. We need to follow the formula that worked last year and collectively attack the critical issues without regard to individual or group agendas. And I'll just comment a little bit more to move us along here. In November, the board members each submitted their top 3 priorities. And just as a summary, those the top 4 were organization, which all 7 directors listed in their top 3, budget, which 5 of the directors used, country club 4, and financial reporting or IT system that we're talking about today, 3. So those were the top 4 that came forward, and so I'll throw it out back to you, Doug, for discussion.
All right, the floor is now open for discussion.
Well, I can kick off the conversation just with a comment that I think we shared with each other earlier, and that is just to reemphasize we are focusing on priorities, not goals. And I think we all understand the difference between the two. The priorities are something, it's a need that exists in a present time and needs to be addressed. So for sake of clarity, the intent of the conversation is really to agree on the top 3 or 4 priorities, not necessarily to discuss the goals, which is going to be very different target setting conversation.
Frank.
Yeah, I think given all the discussion we had, in my mind it boils down to the priority should be this. We have to, I think, work with the GM to establish what I call a sustainable organization that can see us through the future. That organization has to develop a plan for executing the vision that the GM has for this community. And that plan has to include both the budget and KPIs, which takes the financial reporting and country club both into in my mind, right into consideration. So I think it's organization. Organization develops a plan. I think the minute that we, even before that, we have to let JB and his team know what we expect in that plan in terms of budget and measurable KPIs instead of just talking about variance to budget, and we move forward from there, and I think we're done.
Yeah, I'd like to add, so I think what we have here today is the culmination of a lot of discussion that we've had amongst ourselves, the culmination of discussions that we've had with JB, and I think, you know, the fact that we took sort of the straw poll of what we individually think as the important aspects of priorities, and I would agree with you, it's priorities, not goals, is, you know, it really speaks to the fact that we're all kind of on the same page with this, so at the risk of continuing to, and I like to use the term paralysis by analysis, you know, we're in a general level set of agreement at this point, and it's time to say, okay, we agree on these priorities. Now, how can we, A, communicate that to the GM and get his understanding that, you know, he can accomplish those kinds of things, and we all know that he can, and B, how do we make sure that we stay on track with these priorities, and what can we do to assist the GM from a board level to make sure that we stay on these priorities? So, you know, again, to reiterate what Ted said, the top three were organization. By organization, we mean is the organizational structure, the org chart that you have for the association, does it meet the business needs, not only for what we have currently, but what we see or what you see going on in the future? And it's very clear that the board doesn't make that decision. The GM makes that decision. It's the GM's structure. It's the GM's application of providing resources to meet his vision in the long term. You know, the budget, clearly, that's going to be a very important aspect of what we do. We've got a lot of work ahead of us over the next couple of months with regard to that budget. And then, obviously, Country Club and the IT environment are all right in there. So I think it's good that we're having this discussion. And I would just think that, you know, I don't know how much more we have to do, again, based on the fact that we had all these discussions already. So I think we're in a pretty good place, you know, to make sure that we, A, communicate, and B, track. So, Esther.
I agree, and I don't want to beat a dead horse. So I think JB has a good understanding of what the board is looking for. I felt confident in our previous conversations that the understanding was there. You know, I think the bottom line is this. The community wants some decisions at the end of the day. That's what they want. They want us to make decisions. We've been beating to death the Country Club and IT before I got here. So with JB putting together the organizational chart matched with the budget, I think we can get to some resolutions on some of these issues that have been lingering for 2 years. So I don't think we have to keep kicking it.
Frank.
As I say, if it would meet the pleasure of the board and be helpful to JB, we could certainly, and I would volunteer to do it, draft a directive that encompasses what we've talked about. I can get it out to the board early next week. We can review it, and if that encompasses what we want to do, send it to JB and we're done with it.
I appreciate that. I don't even know if we have to go that far. Why don't we let this meeting just dictate publicly what we said, and we can just agree that that's the case.
I heard what I had to hear from right there. I said, I got it.
Save a little paperwork.
Well, we've talked about it so much.
Yeah. Is everybody in agreement? I mean, Frank, I like the idea, but is everybody in agreement that we're comfortable with saying, hey, guess what? These are the top 3 and 4 priorities, and this is what we're going to track to, and this is the order of priority. Everybody okay with that?
Perfect.
Colette, Ted, how about you guys?
Yes. I agree.
In the minutes for this.
Good to go.
All right, so just to memorialize it, we're officially saying that our, Slobodan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if we can, for the sake of timeliness, if we can agree on the date by which we would like to have the GM come to the board with a proposed reorganization restructuring plan. In other words, this is not something that's going to take 3 months or 6 months, but it's something that has to happen in a very near future because there are other things that we need to take into account, like the IT modernization. So having a reorganization in place and reviewed and approved by a certain date is good to have.
Why don't we consider this, rather than a date, just say that, guess what, if you're doing anything radically to change the organization, it has to be reflected in the budget, the upcoming budget. All right, that in itself puts a deliverable date that's a little fluid, but at the same time does, put some parameters around it. Yeah.
We had talked about it at an end date when we had the last discussion. Steve shaking his head, yes.
Like the end of December?
End of December. Yeah, we've already given an end date to what we need to have.
Is that reasonable, JB? I think, I think we've already talked about it. All right.
Yeah.
I've been working on that before you asked.
Okay. So the chances are, most likely, it will absolutely be done before the new calendar year. So in summary, just to memorialize, what we agreed to, we're agreeing that these are the top 4 priorities for the GM in the following order. Organizational structure, the budget for the next upcoming fiscal year, decisions on the clubhouse for the Country Club, and the IT and financial reporting environment. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
All right, just make sure that, Michelle, make sure that makes it to the minutes. That way we can memorialize everything we need. All right, any other discussion with regard to the priorities for the GM? Seeing none, I will close the topic, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn to the work session.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjourning this meeting and moving to a work session, please say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. All right, now we're in the open work session. Now, for those attending, a work session is a little bit different than a regular, Charlie? Okay, stand by, everybody. The producer and director of this show has given us the back